Episode 9 of the Testaments looks quiet on the surface, almost controlled, like nothing major is happening yet. But that calm is misleading. Underneath it, something is already breaking, not through war or open rebellion, but through something far more dangerous in Gilead, an accusation that spreads faster than truth can be proven, and consequences that no one can fully control once they begin. Daisy is at the center of this shift. After everything she has seen inside Gilead, she starts to understand how the system really works. Truth here is not about evidence or justice in the traditional sense. It is about reaction, who speaks first, who is believed, and how loudly something is said. That realization completely changes Daisy's mindset. She is no longer just surviving the system. She is learning how to move inside it. And when she is placed near Dr. Grove as a plum, she sees not just risk, but opportunity. Dr. Grove continues to present himself the same way he always has: calm, professional, controlled. Nothing about him seems unstable in this moment, and that becomes important, because Daisy is expecting a clear confirmation of what she already suspects. But when she doesn't get it, she makes a choice that changes everything. Instead of waiting for truth to appear naturally, she forces it into existence. She tears her clothes, screams, and runs out of the room, turning suspicion into public certainty in seconds. In that moment, Dr. Grove becomes the accused victim of Daisy's accusation. This is where the accusation becomes something larger than Daisy herself. In Gilead, truth does not need full proof to create consequences. It only needs to be believable enough to trigger the system's response. Daisy understands that instinctively, even if she doesn't fully process the moral weight of what she has done. Her accusation is not only about Dr. Grove in that moment, it reflects a pattern of abuse that has been protected for too long. But once it is out in the open, it no longer belongs to intention. It belongs to consequence. Agnes exists in the middle of all this, and her role is far more emotionally complicated. She already knows enough about Dr. Grove to understand that Daisy's accusation is not coming from nowhere, but she also understands what will happen once it becomes official. Agnes is trapped between silence and truth, between survival and moral responsibility. She does not fully support Daisy, but she also cannot fully stop what is happening. She becomes a witness to a truth she cannot safely carry. When Agnes eventually confirms what Daisy has implied, it is not dramatic or loud. It is quiet, almost heavy in its restraint. And that quiet confirmation is what destroys Becca's entire emotional foundation, because Becka has been living in a space of doubt. As long as there is doubt, there is still room for denial. There is still room for her world to make sense. But once Agnes confirms it, that space disappears completely. Becca's reaction is immediate, but it does not start with understanding. It starts with rejection. She lashes out, denies, and tries to turn Daisy into the problem instead of the truth itself. Because accepting the truth means accepting something unbearable, that her father is not just flawed, but part of something deeply corrupt. And that realization cannot be processed cleanly. What follows is not calculated revenge. It is emotional collapse. Becka does not kill Dr. Grove to make Agnes happy. She kills him because her emotional world is completely shattered. However, Agnes's confirmation is the trigger that pushes her past the point of denial. In her confused emotional state, Becka also feels a desperate need for Agnes's approval and understanding, which becomes tangled with her rage and grief. But her decision is not truly about making Agnes happy. It is about breaking under the weight of a reality she can no longer accept. The episode never frames this moment as victory or justice. It feels like an emotional overflow, something that happens when denial can no longer hold reality together. The act is violent, but the psychology behind it is not clarity. It is fracture. Becka is not executing a plan. She is reacting to a world that has suddenly stopped making sense. And the episode refuses to let that be the end of it. Instead, everything immediately shifts into consequence. Becka does not escape cleanly or act like someone in control. She goes to Agnes, not for strategy, but for emotional grounding. In her mind, what she has done is something that should be understood, even shared. But Agnes cannot meet her there. She understands the system they are trapped in, and she understands what Gilead does to people who cross certain lines. So instead of unity, there is distance. Instead of clarity, confusion. That emotional disconnect becomes the final break between them. When Becka is taken by the eyes at the end of the episode, nothing is fully explained. It is not confirmed what her fate will be, and that ambiguity is intentional. Because in Gilead, justice is never transparent. It is enforced first, interpreted later, and understood only in fragments. Agnes is left behind screaming, unable to stop what has already been set in motion. Becka is dragged away, believing she has been betrayed. And in that final moment, the episode makes one thing very clear. This was never just about Dr. Grove. He was only the trigger. The real story of Episode 9 is how Daisy's pursuit of truth, Agnes's silence, and Becca's emotional breaking point collide into the same outcome. Total destruction that no one fully planned, but everyone contributed to. And in Gilead, that is what truth always becomes, not justice, but consequence. Episode 9 of the Testaments ultimately leaves us with a heavy, unresolved feeling rather than any sense of closure. What begins as suspicion and quiet uncertainty turns into a chain reaction that no one fully controls once it starts moving. Daisy's fear, Agnes's restrained knowledge, and Becca's emotional instability all collide in a way that slowly removes every safe option available to them. By the time everything reaches its breaking point, it becomes clear that this was never just about one accusation or one person. It was about how easily truth can shift inside Gilead, how quickly it can turn from a private concern into something that reshapes lives completely. Daisy never fully understands the weight of what her words will trigger, but the system around her ensures that even uncertainty becomes powerful enough to change everything. Becca's actions come from that same unstable ground. She is not driven by clarity or control, but by emotional overload in a world where hesitation feels just as dangerous as action. Once her perception of Dr. Grove changes, there is no space left for doubt to settle. And when she finally acts, it is less about decision and more about breaking under pressure that has been building throughout the episode. What makes the ending even more impactful is how quickly everything falls apart afterward. There is no clean resolution, no moment where things reset or stabilize. Instead, each character is left carrying a different form of loss. Daisy with unintended consequences, Agnes with silence she can no longer escape, and Becca with an outcome that immediately removes her from the world she was trying to protect. In the end, Episode 9 doesn't just focus on what happened. It focuses on what cannot be undone. It shows how in Gilead, truth is never isolated. Once it is spoken, it spreads beyond intention, reshaping people and relationships in ways that no one is prepared for. And by the time the consequences arrive, it is already too late to separate truth from destruction. What remains is not justice, not victory, and not clarity, but the lasting reality that every action in Gilead carries a cost far greater than the moment it caused it. After Dr. Grove's death, Becca's world collapses almost instantly. She is still in shock, unable to fully process what she has done. When the eyes arrive without warning, there is no dramatic confrontation or public accusation, just silence, movement, and obedience. Becca is taken before she even has time to understand what is happening. At first, she believes it is an interrogation. She keeps telling herself that if she explains everything, the fear, Daisy's accusation, Agnes's confirmation, someone will understand. But as she is moved deeper into custody, that belief slowly fades. The eyes don't ask emotional questions. They don't seek comfort or justification. They only observe, record, and decide. Becca is placed in a hidden detention facility used for internal threats within Gilead. There, she is isolated completely. No contact with Agnes. No word about Daisy. No connection to anything familiar. The silence becomes its own form of punishment, heavier than any physical threat. Days blur together as she is left alone with her thoughts. Instead of answers, she is given uncertainty. Instead of judgment, she is given waiting. And in that waiting, Becca begins to realize something she never considered before. Gilead doesn't always punish with execution. Sometimes it punishes by removing you from meaning entirely. By the time Becca understands the full weight of her situation, it is already too late to change it.